Hello and welcome to another episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles, where we explore the rich history, vibrant events, and remarkable stories that make up the Osgoode ward and surrounding communities. In each episode, we dive deep into our local heritage, drawing from the meticulous records and research of our local historians and families. These invaluable resources allow us to bring you stories from the past, ensuring that the traditions that shaped our community are shared with future generations. Whether you're a lifelong resident like me, or a newcomer, join us as we tie our fascinating history to the present-day version of our beloved region of Osgoode and surrounding communities. You may or may not have noticed that I shifted my publishing day for this podcast to later in the week. With the boys off for the winter here, weekends are busy, and where I used to have all kinds of time to play on things like this podcast, I have a little bit less on the weekends. So, instead, I've shifted the podcast production to go through the week, and I'll publish new episodes on Friday moving forward. I hope that's still convenient for most of you. In today's episode, we'll have our news and events calendar as usual. Our business segment today is about the Rolston General Store in Metcalfe. Our historical segment introduces us, of course, to the Rolston family. Our Community Voices is a newspaper article about Metcalfe from the Ottawa Journal. And we'll finish up with another mental health moment. Let's get into it. Every week on the podcast, we'll share some of the local events that are taking place in our area. So many great people doing great things. Please be sure that you get out to support them. Every Monday, there's euchre at the Osgoode Legion starting at 6:30 p.m. You can come on out. Singles, doubles, everyone is welcome. They also have darts on Tuesday and bingo on Thursdays as well. The Greeley Legion hosts a monthly euchre tournament, and it starts at noon on the second Saturday of every month. The next one is March 8th. The Metcalfe Community Association is hosting their first fundraiser of the year. It's a quilt raffle. Metcalfe resident Stacey Haynes has donated a beautiful quilt she created based on the weather in Metcalfe for each day in 2023. The colors in the quilt represent the daily highs and lows in temperature. There are only 100 tickets available, and the raffle takes place on March 31st. Proceeds are going to purchase flowers for the village this spring. February 17th is Family Day, and you can go to Family Day at the farm. The Happy Little Farmstead in Spencerville is hosting Family Day on Family Day, and they'll have lots of fun activities for everyone in the family from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. They have indoor and outdoor activities for all, and admission is just $5. On February 18th and 25th, you can see Wicked, the prequel to The Wizard of Oz, being shown at the Senior Center in Kempville. It's a free event, but you do need to RSVP ahead of time. Also on February 18th, the OVCA AGM is at St. Paul's Anglican Church on Main Street at 7:30 p.m. That's in Osgoode, and it's open to all. On February 19th, Osgoode Porch Fest is having an open house planning meeting at Oya at 7:30 p.m. They're starting to pull together this year's event, and everyone is welcome. They're looking to expand the programming, and they're welcoming everyone's input. February 20th, the Osgoode Township Museum is hosting another Museum Talks session. This month, Steve Rennie will share his fascinating research into Ottawa's baseball history, just in time for spring training. Register on Eventbrite to get the Zoom link. On February 22nd, it's Winter in the Park at the Greeley West Park, and there's skating, tobogganing, horse sleigh rides, hot dogs, hot chocolate, and more from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. On February 23rd, the Greenhouse Book Fair is at Robert Plant Greenhouses starting at 10 a.m. There will be 20 authors there showcasing their works and book-related vendors offering products like stationery, journals, pens, and more. It is free to attend. February 28th to March 1st, the I Heart Beer and Taco Festival is taking place at the EY Center. I share this because I love both beer and tacos. It's a 19-plus event with lots of food and drink vendors and some activities planned too. On March 1st, St. Patrick's Day Market is taking place at the North Grenville Municipal Centre in Kempville, presented by the Eastern Ontario Craft and Gift Market. It runs from 10 till 3. And as I mentioned last week, on March 1st until April 20th, the Stanley's Sugar Bush is going to be open. We'll give you more details closer to that date, but do mark it down. And finally, March 2nd is Seedy Sunday, taking place at Kempville's greenhouse from 10 to 2. It's free to get in, and there's a seed swap, some info sessions, and vendors there as well. Be sure to check in on our youth associations. We have Osgoode Youth Association, Greeley Youth Association, Youth of Manotick Association, and the Kempville Youth Centre, and they all have lots and lots of activities for our youth, especially in this long winter. And that is our news and events for this week. In this week's Business Spotlight, we're talking about Rolston's store in Metcalfe. This excerpt comes from a publication called A Historical Tour of Metcalfe of 1900, and it was produced by the Women's Institute. For many years around the turn of the century, 8197 Victoria Street was the home of a prominent Metcalfe businessman, J.L. Rolston. While the central porch of 8197 has been added in recent years, much of the original woodwork, siding, and windows, with their slightly distorted glass, are well preserved, and the metal roof is very old. Inside the cafe, you can see original 12-inch baseboards. Partners James L. Rolston of March and Robert Pink of Hull opened their first general store in Metcalfe in 1874. The store was eventually relocated to 8199 beside the house. Pink and Rolston also owned a sawmill on Kent Street and a shingle mill, a carding mill, and a grist mill. Pink and Rolston were linked by more than just business concerns. Pink married Rolston's sister Caroline, while Rolston married Pink's niece Elizabeth. When Elizabeth died after only 1 year of marriage, Rolston married her cousin Ellen. Ellen lived to be 91 and had 7 children, one of whom, Ernest, ran the store and undertaking business after his father retired. Rolston was president of the Metcalfe Rural Telephone Company, treasurer of the Metcalfe Agricultural Society, and a postmaster. He headed the local school board for several years and belonged to the Russell Masonic Lodge. He was a staunch supporter of the Anglican Church and the president of the Russell County Conservative Association. He ran unsuccessfully in the provincial election of 1905. His store sold dry goods, fabric, shoes, clothing, and patent medicines. In addition, he ran the only undertaking business in the village, provided goods on credit, and sometimes lent money. And he accepted goods on barter in exchange for items bought from the store. This shop had 2 levels, lower front with its dry goods on the east wall and the grocery on the west. With a changeover in government, Laurier's Liberals to Borden's Conservatives in 1911, the post office inched its way into the corner. Bolts of material on the east wall included a variety of dress goods, factory cotton for homemade bed sheets and summer underwear for the womenfolk. Flannelette served the same purpose for winter use. Materials for men's shirt, day wear and dress occasions, and heavy duck for overalls. Accompanying the ever-present spool case, a variety of fancy braids, baby ribbon, lace, buttons, and other trimming accessories. The opposite wall stored the usual package of staple goods, including the proverbial green tea in green tea boxes, and the not-to-be-forgotten medical cures, pink pills, cascara, and senna tea for Saturday night's drink that was the so-called cure for all child ailments, for pain and aches, nothing better than Minard's liniment. Bins of staple goods sold by the pound and wooden kegs of vinegar and molasses filled in the under-counter space. Tables down the center were stacked with heavy socks, toques, caps, and overalls. Underneath boxes bulged with rubbers for all ages and men's long rubber boots. Name the article and you could buy it. 3 steps at the back of the store led to a second level. At the left was a small, partially enclosed business office. A high desk displayed the usual bill heads, invoices, and account books. Spike files with charge accounts hung on the wall, but that little safe corner suggested a bundle of money. A high stool opposite was my usual shoe-fitting perch, the wall behind a mass of shoe boxes. Rolston's undertaking business was an extension of their services. We stood wide-eyed watching Ernie Rolston twist and turn the white silk in and around the interior of the stark, cold wooden boxes, a distinct contrast to the dead black applied to the exterior. The shop at 8199 was later owned by Don Giles, Babs Grosseteria, Alf Ligo, and most recently is home to a beauty salon. In the Rolston house, the rooms which once saw most of Metcalfe's important wakes are now apartments. And that is our business spotlight for this week. This week's historical segment, we will meet just a few of the Rolston family, starting with J.L., James Little Rolston, who married Elizabeth Herdman. She died just a year after they were married, and after that he remarried her cousin, Ellen Jane Herdman. They had 7 children: Laura Ethel, Ernest Herdman, Edna Joan, Ella Grace, Eva Elizabeth, Caroline Hilda, and Lloyd. Ernest married Ethel May Simpson, and they had 4 children. Ethel was the postmistress for many years, and their 4 children are Noel, Keith, Roy, and Phyllis. Edna Joan married John William Purvis. Ella Grace married Andrew Edmund Harkness. Eva Elizabeth married Howard Gordon Vale. Lloyd married Jean Brown. And Caroline Hilda married Frederick David Cowan. Now, Caroline and Frederick's 4 children were George, Jane, Ellen Joyce, and Frederick. And there's a little more information on those 2 that I was able to uncover. George married Audrey Woodcock in the UK, but settled back in this area, in the Honey Gables area off River Road, and they had 4 children of their own. And then Jane married Ward Earl Stevens. There's not a whole lot that is sort of online for the Rolston family after that, but I did want to mention them because, of course, Ethel is in our Community Voices segment, which you will hear shortly, and we're talking about Rolston Store in Metcalfe today, so I thought it was a little bit of an expansion into their family and who they were. So I am quite sure there are more connections in the area, and I will continue to keep an eye on the Rolston family and the other families that they married into so that we can make those connections back in future episodes. And that is our historical segment for this week. Today's Community Voices segment comes from a newspaper article from the Ottawa Journal in 1964. And it's a column from Robert Fothergill titled Metcalfe Becoming Haven for Ottawa Fun Lovers. I just love the headline. And this article is part of a full-page spread on Metcalfe, and we'll get to the rest of the page after I read the article. The idea that you have to live in the city to have fun is a view that is becoming as outmoded as the latest fashion style. The truth is, more people than ever are moving into less populated areas like this picturesque little village. The wind-up day for what has been a winter week of fun for both local and Ottawa residents taking part was Saturday, which included a high school hockey tournament and a bonspiel. Winner of the 8-team hockey playoff series was Queant High School, which beat Metcalfe 4-1. It won the annual Osgoode High School annual trophy. Yes, it says annual twice in the article. Curling winners for the day were Jay Bryden of Cityview, 2-game winner, and Donald Kamesh of the Ottawa Hunt Club, single winner. Each day during the past week, curlers from Ottawa rinks, Metcalfe and area have been matching skills for prizes put up by the Metcalfe Curling Club. A dance at the Metcalfe Memorial Centre and a party at the Curling Club wound up the day's events. Club President Gordon Scrivens presented briefcases and blankets to the winners. The village, about 20 miles from the heart of the capital, with a population of about 600, many working in Ottawa, is located just 1 mile east of Highway 31. It practically sits on the doorstep of Ottawa's galloping urban sprawl, and by the year 2000 will likely be swallowed up by a mammoth subdivision. Yet it is a safe bet that even long after the city has spread to Metcalfe, the village's community spirit will still go marching on. Best possible reason for this is the pride its residents take in the village's colorful history, which goes back to pioneer days of the 1800s, when Metcalfe, as now, was the hub of the surrounding farm area. A future town planner looking for an answer to the vexing problem of how to retain the good things of the past along with the new might well look to Metcalfe as a satellite community with the answer. At the heart of the village, where nearly everyone gathers at least once a week, is the Community Center Memorial Building, which back in 1952 cost $50,000 to build. The huge structure houses a hockey rink with a 180 by 75-foot ice surface, seats 700, and has a dance hall. There is also a refreshment stand and change rooms. Next door to it is another community pride and joy, the Metcalfe Curling Club's two-lane rink. They've been curling in Metcalfe for 32 years. Not to be overlooked is the Metcalfe Agricultural Fair, an organization which has become an institution of the district. Its history goes back to 1856. A noticeable influx of Ottawa residents who find it more fun to live in a rural community is gradually replacing the retired farmers who once made up a majority of the village's population. It's extraordinary the way things have changed these past few years, says 77-year-old native of the village, Mrs. Ethel M. Rolston. The former postmistress fondly recalls the days when she drove with her father to deliver the mail in Ottawa, via stagecoach. There were only half a dozen houses between here and Greeley in those days. Now look at it. They're sprinkled everywhere, she said. Isn't that just the cutest article? It's a bit of a lifestyle. And an interesting note on the page that the article was written on, there are also 5 photos. Like I said, it's a full-page spread about Metcalfe. The captions on the photos are mixed up on 2 of the photographs. The one that accompanies this article is a lovely picture of Ethel Rolston, and it should read, "A former postmistress of Metcalfe, Mrs. Ethel M. Rolston, 77, recalls the days when she used to drive to Ottawa with her father on the stagecoach. We used to carry passengers as well as the mail. We'd leave at 7 a.m. and get back by 6 p.m. In those days, she said, the village had 3 hotels, 6 shoemakers, and a brass band. She retired from the post office in 1953 after 59 years. It's a really lovely photo, and it's a really lovely caption. They're just not together. That caption appears under a photo of 2 people and a dog singing at a piano. The other photo is of Russell Blair and his wife Gertrude with their dog Skip, but it is underneath the photo of Ethel sorting the mail. So it's a little confusing, but I'll read that caption as well. A longtime resident of the village of Metcalfe, 81-year-old Russell Blair joins in a sing-song at the piano with his wife Gertrude and the couple's pet dog Skip. Mr. Blair, who for 36 years was a clerk-treasurer for the township of Osgoode, retired in 1953. Active in community affairs most of his life, he helped organize the first curling club in 1926 and was the main driving force in having a $50,000 community center built. This fellow did his homework in terms of who to take the pictures of, didn't he? The other 3 photos include one of some young men playing guitar at the Metcalfe Curling Club. Guys you probably will know: Jerry Provo, Cecil Rainey, Bill Woods, Mark Woods, Eldon Coombe, and Ed Honeywell. We'll have more on the Metcalfe Curling Club in a future podcast episode. In case you didn't know, the club is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. Another photo on the page shows a mob of teenagers descends on the refreshment stand between hockey games Saturday at Metcalfe Rink. That's in the caption. And I'll be talking to Barry Nixon soon to get some, of course, Nixon family history and the other people that they are related to in the area. And of course, Barry is well known for operating the canteen at what is now called the Larry Robinson Arena. And the final picture is of a couple of lads at Jim Miller's General Store, having a smoke and enjoying a chat over the oil stove. Those lads are Cecil Johnson and John Hill. I love old pictures, and this particular article was folded up in a collection that Mike Daly had, and I'm so happy to share the full-page spread with you today. I'll snap some pictures and put it up on the website for you to see as well. And that is our Community Voices segment for this week. In today's mental health moment, I just wanted to touch briefly on the Buy Canadian movement that is taking place across the country as a result of the current unrest, I'll call it, in the US. Buying Canadian is something we should have always been doing, and buying local is also a high priority, or should be. We need to visit our local businesses if we want them to stay in our villages. And as such, I wanted to share a little blurb about the social life in Metcalfe in the early days, also taken from the historical tour book. And it's called Social Life. Despite the quiet nature of the village today, it may surprise you to know that Metcalfe once had 4 hotels with bars, and in the late 1800s, several of the general stores also had liquor licenses. The village must have been quite a rowdy place on a Saturday night. At the same time, the village supported 5 churches: Roman Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist. So it was a busy place on a Sunday morning too. During the 1930s, movies were screened in the town hall. At 5 cents for a movie ticket and 5 cents for an ice cream on the way home, a pleasant night's entertainment could be had for only a dime. There was also a tennis club, a brass band, and plenty of sports and social clubs. Can you imagine all of those things existing in the village at the same time? Just as we talked about Kenmore being a very industrial or busy town when it was first populated, Metcalfe was definitely a hopping place socially. I just wanted to share that because we need to extend our Buy Canadian movement to buy local. Keep our towns vibrant and busy with activity every day, not just when Santa Claus or the fair come to town. And that is this week's Mental Health Moment. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles. I hope you enjoyed our connections from the past and our taste of the present. Now you know a little bit more about Metcalfe. Of course, we have so much more to share with you about that, but I feel like we got a little glimpse of the original days just from these few bits today. I hope you liked it. Now remember, you can catch all of our past episodes on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also listen online at our website, osgoodecommunitychronicles.com, and follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. Don't miss next week's episode where we will share more news and events in your area and more stories of families past and present. Thanks again for supporting this snapshot of our local community. I'm Tracy Daviero, and this has been Osgoode Community Chronicles, keeping our rural spirit alive one story at a time. I'll see you next week.